1954 to 1957. American Flyer, AC Gilbert, S-Gauge. We're going to tear this thing down. We're going to maintain it. We're going to fix it. We're going to get it running like a beauty again. Welcome back to another Hauntober Halloween episode. I'm Ron with Classic Model Trains. Today's rescue, we're going to be doing an AC Gilbert American Flyer 442, also referred to as an Atlantic. This particular model right here, 303, was available from 1954 until 1957. There were 12 different Atlantic models, 12 different cab numbers, that were available in the 3-digit cab numbering systems. Before we get fired up into the rescue, dug around online, come to find out there's a lot of information available out there. Right here is a wiring schematic for this particular one, for guys that like to look at wiring schematics. And this one right here is an illustrated parts breakdown. Now the downside about this illustrated parts breakdown is that the numbers that they're calling the parts, I couldn't find the list for it. So unfortunately, I just had to make up the names. So if I don't know what it was actually really called, I'm just going to fake it and call it what I think it should be called. This particular locomotive is equipped with pull-more wheels. That is a trademark of AC Gilbert American Flyer, and the stuff they got on it is called Tractionite. Oh, that sounds like 1950s, don't it? Tractionite, this is basically a fancy word for traction tires. So this particular model, and the ones earlier on in the production, the rubber was vulcanized to the metal wheel of the steam locomotives and the diesels. Later on, they re-engineered the wheel to have a groove cut in it, so there was an actual rubber band type of drive traction tire that you would put on. So the earlier ones, vulcanized to the wheels. Later ones, a really easily replaceable traction tire, gasket, rubber band, O-ring, whatever you'd like to call them. Let's get fired up on this video. This one here came from my vintage store find video that was up about 2 months ago. It was one of the 3 Atlantic locomotives that I got from that purchase. I liked this one because it's the most feature laden. Let's throw it on the test track and see how it works, see how it doesn't work, see what it does, see what it doesn't do. Here's 303. Kind of sits up high in the back end like a stink bug, don't it? Something's going wrong in there, I think. That looks kind of odd. Now this one here, it doesn't have a reversing solenoid functioning whatsoever. Will not reverse. Got a nice chug to it. Plus, it's a smoker. Look at that. Can you believe it? Couldn't be happier. But I got to fix that reversing solenoid because it won't stop at all. Or it won't reverse at all. Let's begin the disassembly of this 303. I'm going to take this main rod off here first, 1/4-inch nut driver, and just to get these out of the way so that they don't drive us mad. Yeah, they flop around and you know how it is. I think I'll put the nut back in just so I don't lose it. Pop the second one out. 2 screws up in here. And then we can remove this steam and these arms, leaving them as an assembly so you don't have to lose your mind trying to put it back together. 2 screws right here. Then you slide it forward just a wee bit and it'll come out of the body. Now I see that somebody's done some fancy modifications here and they put in I don't know if this is a grain of wheat. So we're gonna have to desolder these wires here on the top just so we can get the body away. So, because I'm pretty sure it didn't come from the factory with the hot glue holding the light bulb in, you know. Tender, 4 bolts each corner. Pop these out. Once you get all 4 of those out, the body will just come right off of the frame. Look at that. My goodness. Have they done something to add some weight Jeez, looks like they got some extra pieces laying around the factory and like, yeah, pour it in the mold. Reversing unit right here, solenoid. I'm gonna take this screw out right here just so I don't have to move the tender and the loco as a complete unit all the time. Save some undue stress. Here's the pickups you can see down here. So the tender's doing all the work for bringing the juice in. This here's the chugging unit. This is working off of a worm gear off the motor. They are a universal motor. They can operate on AC or DC from the research that I just found out about. This gear rides on top of the worm gear, moves a piston in and out right through here, makes that chugging sound. Also pushes that air through the smoke box, and then the smoky smoke comes right out here. Get these headlight wires out of our way. Now we can take this to the sink, give it a good washing, man, because they are dirty. Shelf Queen Life does that to them. Scrub brush with a little Dawn dish soap, real gentle. Give these a hand washing. Under in here, October, and then the year that it was made, it got blotched out. I've got this on my test track right now, and there's things a guy gets to learn about as you go through life. And one of the things that a guy gets to learn about is what this lever right down here does. It's a lockout, and it doesn't let this relay change the directions. And it was in lockout because I didn't know anything about that. Now I've got neutrals and I got reverses, but we do have a sticky. This is sticky, and it's dirty, and it responds slow. It still needs a good cleaning. Take everything apart or disassemble as much as a guy can, and give this thing a real nice, just a service. Because, now everything's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. That was good. I'm glad that this coil wasn't burned out or something like that, because, well, then I'd have to hand wrap a coil, which is something I've been looking forward to, just not yet. Smoke unit's being held on by these two screws sitting in here. They don't look very stock. They look like something that somebody picked up from the hardware store, which is fine. Got to do what you got to do to get these old girls back to running. Smoke unit. Here's our little piston that's making that noise as it rolls in and out through here, which is kind of dirty. Got another screw right down under here. Oh, ish. There's enough grease in there. Oh my. This pin right here that this puffer gear is riding on is pressed into this side of the frame. So a little drift pinning and a little hammering right there will get that to come out. This is driven out as far as it can go, but it still doesn't want to come out. But I think I can get the motor out of there. Pull these screws out here at the back. One at the top, one at the bottom. Nope. Oh yeah, she just blew up all over the place. Here's some brushes, brush holders. They slide off. There's springs inside here. Back of the case, brush spring in here. There's so much grease all over this thing. Holy moly. Our stator electromagnets right through here. Commutator, very dirty. Screw that armature out of there. So yeah, things to clean. Things to clean up. Got the thing real freewheeling now. This lever right here is holding this gear in. So if I remove this pin will come out, then we can get that gear out of there, and then we've got this chassis opened up. Is there a thrust washer in here? Yeah, there is, just right where it belongs. Now that's what I'm talking about. I love them thrust washers. How about back here? I don't see one there. There's not one in here either. Sure, you gotta have the thrust washers. Somebody took this apart and then they just always lose a thrust washer. This little piston here, this little bolt right there, 3/16. Let's get in there and remove that little guy. My inappropriate driving tools can complete this process. One gear, one pin. Yep, yeah. Now these wheels are pressed onto these axles. There's no way to get those out of there. So we're gonna do a significant amount of cleaning with Q-tips and mineral spirits to get this cleaned up, get all these pieces cleaned up. I don't need to film that because we all sort of know how to clean things. Is that a wick right there? Oh, it sure is. It's got a piece of felt in there for lubricating up this rear armature bushing, keeping it well lubricated. Well, that'll be damned. That is nice. Well, after a very extended amount of time cleaning the locomotive up, this is what we've got. All the parts came out real nice. This was, well, you see I had to put that in the ultrasonic cleaner because it was so packed full of grease right in here. And it was just solid. And you can't get a toothpick to go all the way through there. So that seemed to be the only best bet to get this as clean as possible. I think before we begin reassembly, I want to remove this reversing unit here. I know when they're on a Lionel, they call them an E unit. And I don't know why they do that. E, why don't they call it an R unit, short for reversing? But an E unit, there's just this one screw that's right up under here on this truck, under this truck, and that's going to allow this, I'm going to call it a reversing relay. I like to buck the system. I make my own rules. This solenoid, as it goes up and down, needs to have all the parts work on it clean, and they need to be oiled. And then this drum that rotates in here, you can kind of see it here, that needs to be cleaned up so that it spins freely, and then these copper contacts need to be nice and clean too. So once again, we'll go back to the mineral spirits, Q-tips, and get down in there and clean all these little moving parts. Seems about the best way to get this drum cleaned out is you come in from the bottom here, and you can take this and you can kind of roll it with your Q-tip and spin it and get all them copper contacts in there cleaned up. If you see that it moves, clean that area up, we're gonna oil it. Here, I can actually activate this thing by hand. You can see down in this area, these two contacts here are picking up which switches the juice going to the motor. And every time this electromagnet is energized, it lifts up this paddle, and that paddle rotates that drum because it's got little teeth over here doing all the switching. Now I want to lubricate all the stuff that moves, but not just a little bit. There's this little pawl down here. We want to make sure it gets oiled nicely so that this thing can move really freely while keeping these copper contacts clean. So this reversing unit is a done deal. Here's that lockout switch that I didn't know existed. So when you move it over like this, of course it won't allow that to move whatsoever, so you can lock it into position. Now, not all American Flyer S-scales have this on there. Some are just, they don't lock out. Even some of the entry-level ones, it only goes in the forward position. So this is one of the Cadillacs, I guess. Unless you're a Ford guy, then this is one of the Lincolns. Put this E unit back in, line up these little slots, these tabs right there. Fight to get this screw in place, and that'll be done. So every time I hit the direction lever on my Lionel thing, you can see this thing's doing what we'd hoped for it to do. So this makes me pretty happy. We'll get on to putting this back together. Since it freewheels right now it's just an excellent time to oil up these axles. If a guy can get down on the outside of the frame and get to the axle point or get it from the inside. On this gear, this metal gear, I want to use some multi-purpose synthetic grease. Now somebody had used what looked like chassis lube the first time around that I spent hours cleaning out. And it doesn't really take a lot in here. Once it's all put together with this helical gear right here, it'll kind of spread out. We'll give this gear a little taste right here. And then this bushing that's down here, since you can't get to it and oil it like you can the back one, I am going to put a little bit of this right up in this neck of the woods too. Seems like a guy you kind of gotta screw it in. Yeah, see now we can really spread the grease around in there. We'll throw on our stator electromagnets. You can tell that it's that way because of this coil right here. These are not permanent magnets. And I think I'll just put just a little bit of grease on the back over here of this armature. I thought about not putting in the thrust washers again. Don't forget these thrust washers, fellers. They like to have them. Little grease on both sides of the thrust washer. reinstall our motor bolts here that holds this whole thing together, having lubed up the two shafts there, lubed up the axles and the drive gear. Now we can fight to put our chugga back in. It's got this little gear here that's put just a little bit of grease on our smoke unit drive gear, and then this pin will get driven back in. Of course, you got to get the splines to line up with the way the splines were put into this part here initially, and it should go in relatively easy. That pin was probably put in at the factory with an arbor press. My little nail set and hammer device wasn't working well. I didn't like the forces that were taking place. It seems like something could break. This seems to be working pretty good right here because I can squeeze it from both sides, keep the force kind of the same. Pin is coming out on this side over here, and this has got too much play in it, so I got to keep pressing it. But if you get it in too far, then you're going to pinch this gear, and then it won't rotate. Just a little bit of play, not much, some. Don't make it excessive. Give it a little oil on the back side over there, and then of course this gear is going to have to be greased up also. Now our smoke unit piston, I'm going to give it a little bit of oil on it too, because it's got to slide in and out of the cylinder that it's in. How much oil? I don't know. I think I'm going to put just a bit more. See, the bar is offset towards the left side of the locomotive. This is the front. Offset it to the left to bolt into this gear here, and then we will put the bolts in for the smoke unit. Now our chugga, we'll bolt that little feller back up. Yeah, that can be put in and snugged up because it's got a shoulder on it, which keeps it from pinching the bar. We're going to give it a little taste of oil, both sides. The brushes were all cleaned up. You can see how one end is a little shorter than the other. That is to seat the spring onto. Put the wide end in first, then your spring. And these spring keepers, they're a little tricky because you got to collapse the spring inside there. Make sure it stays. Make sure you don't launch it across the room. And then you got to push this damn spade terminal connector on. Who invents stuff like this? There is a slot in the end there. It makes me wonder if there's some sort of special tool that I don't have that makes this happen. Don't catch the spring in between the spade terminal because it'll bend them. Yep, there it is. Put our bolt in that holds the tender. We'll give that just a littlest of taste also. There's this wick right here that goes in the end for this armature, piece of felt, and it's made to hold this oil and keep the end of that motor lubricated up. I'm thinking this thing should run now. Unleash the storm! Take this opportunity to give these gears maybe just another little bit. Spread it around. I got my wires soldered back on for the headlamp, so we will begin to get these bodies put back on. Tender, of course, is pretty straightforward. It's just got them 4 bolts. Get everything lined up. These screws right through here, that's holding these 2 tabs on, they were all stripped out. I noticed that these holes up here have got some stress cracks in them. So I took these screws out and I put some CA glue down inside the holes and screwed the screws back in, which of course will tighten up the hole. Over here, I just dripped a little bit, couple drops, 2, 3 down the walls. So that way when I go to put these screws in right here, they're gonna have maybe a little bit more something to grab onto, because it was definitely kind of flopping around. You got these wires that go up to the smoke unit and headlamp assembly. They've got to be run just right to get this body to fit in there and to get these mounting tabs to do what they're supposed to. So it's like you push it forward and then you slide it back just a little bit till these line up, and then lift up back over here to make sure that those tabs down at the bottom worked. So far this has gone along really well. Get these front chassis screws in, and now we get a fight with this. These side rods go together like this, and then you slide it in to here. Try to get that whole thing going. 1/4-inch nut driver. Get those snugged up real nice. I think that's probably a good time to screw this front truck mount in and the valve gear slides, because they're just gonna flop around and be a hassle. Catch this other side. Oh yeah, see? Get that piston rod in there. Give that a nice little tighten. Plus, we also want to make sure we've got some oil on the thing. Top and the bottom of the slides and the main rod and the connecting rod. Not too much though. You just want to put in a little bit less than too much. Wheels back here, since I've yet to lube them up. Couldn't really move those around. Never got these wheels, so we can catch this axle shaft. And then of course these front ones. I left this gear cover off down here because I wanted to make sure that there was enough in there. And I believe it is. Guy could just pop this gear cover off and inspect it every now and then. I'm gonna get this on, and that's the last step of this revival. Now that we got all the maintenance taken care of, let's put it back on the track. See how well she runs. Today, it's been raining all day, all weekend almost. I found just a little bit of a dry spot to get everything set up outside because I don't have enough room for an S-gauge layout inside. And I got just a few shots. Hopefully I made a pretty cool video out of just these few shots that I got in between rain droplets. Let's take a look at it, see how good she looks. There's one more week of October left. That means I got one more episode I can get it put up for the Hauntober Specials. My favorite time of the year. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, put a like down, give it a thumbs up, throw me some comments. Hell, you can even subscribe. That way you'll know when I throw more of these up and you guys can check them out. So thanks once again. I'm Ron, Classic Model Trains. Bye-bye.